Really excited to have Danny and Lisa here with us to talk about Ramp, our partners at Ramp. And so I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to them to get started. I'll be monitoring questions in Conferences IO for them. But Danny, I'll let you get started.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate it, Rebecca, and thank you everybody for letting us carve out some of your day to day and chat with you. The first thing Lisa mentioned when we talked about doing this, she goes, "Let's make this a fun webinar." So we can't see y'all, but we trust that you're having a blast behind the screen. Quick introduction. My name's Danny Moeller. I'm a channel partner manager here at Ramp. That's a really fancy title for saying I work with bookkeeping firms, accounting firms, outsourced CFOs, everywhere in between. And Lisa is one of our fantastic partners that I've had the pleasure of working with, I don't know, over the past couple years at this point, and learning from her as well as receiving her feedback. So Lisa, I'll hand it over to you and let you give a quick intro on yourself as well.
Thanks, Danny. And I also have a nice fancy title. It's called Process Reengineer. I'm actually head of consulting at Kiwi Partners. Kiwi is an outsourced accounting, consulting, and HR firm. And I'm a CPA and a project management professional. But really, what I do is I wear my process reengineer hat. So we go into a lot of our nonprofit clients and we re-engineer their finance and accounting processes. And that often includes tools like Ramp. And thank you, Rebecca, for inviting us here.
And so just cutting to the chase, right? Like, what are we going to be talking about today? And it's spend versus expense management, along with automating workflows to elevate your advisory services. So we'll get into it. I'll start with the agenda here. And I'll be covering the current state of expense management, what I've seen across different firms that I've worked with. I'll hand it over to Lisa to cover optimizing accounting workflows. We'll hop into a Ramp demo, which I'm really excited for. Please, 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 if you can, in the chat or the questions, shout out maybe a piece that you want to see or that you want to learn more about, so that way I can highlight that piece during the demo so that it's really productive for everybody. We'll talk about partnering with Ramp, and then we'll leave some time for Q&A. So because I can't see you, I imagine everybody's nodding their head and saying, let's go. We're so excited for spend management. But let's jump into it. So legacy expense report process. I'm very familiar with this. In a former life, I was using Concur. I've used Expensify. And the problem has been revolutionized, or the process has been revolutionized, I should say. Because when you think about expense management and what that means, you're tasking folks to use their personal card, use a company card, then you're tasking them to keep track of that receipt, and then you're hoping that they submit it on time, and then you're also hoping that they do it accurately, and then you're tasking somebody else to review all of that information. So Ramp recognized that as a problem and created a solution to speed that up, get finance teams and firms that information instantly. Ramp is really focused on solving this problem, getting finance teams as soon as that transaction occurs, and we'll talk through how exactly we do that. So on average, just real quick, an expense report, $58 on average, an hour worth of time. What would you rather your employees do with that hour of time? What would you rather do with that $58 that compounds over the number of expense reports that you're processing? A lot of our firms and our partners, their tech stack looks something similar to this, where they have an HR solution, and then they might have a credit card solution, whether it's corporate or maybe it's personal. And then they also have an employee reimbursement tool along with accounts payable. And then they're trying to funnel that into an ERP solution like QuickBooks, NetSuite, Sage, Xero, Acumatica, Business Dynamics. And so there's all of these different pieces that you're trying to get to talk to each other. And so Ramp recognized that and was like, hey, let's make a one-stop shop for all of these business expenses. When you think about Ramp high level, Ramp can solve or help automate all of your business expenses outside of payroll. We're kind of this middleman between your HR solution, whoever you bank with, your accounting solution, and then some really powerful API connections with Gmail, Lyft, Uber, Amazon. So we're getting all this information under one roof, so you're not jumping between different systems, trying to figure out who spent what, where should I look for to find this transaction? Oh, this was a reimbursement. Maybe I go over here, or maybe I go to my bank account. All of your business expenses, you can think ramp. And so if we think about efficiency and putting time back in your day, if you had one tool to manage all of this, that's where you can really start to become an expert in a platform like Ramp and start putting time back into your day. So in summary, what exactly does Ramp offer? First and foremost, we connect to the most common accounting softwares. We offer corporate cards, but I want to pause here for a little because our corporate cards are not just like an Amex or a Capital One that's in your pocket. You can actually control how, where, when employees can spend money. On top of that, as soon as you swipe your Ramp card, you're prompted with a text message that says, "Hey, what was this for?" Making it so incredibly easy for employees to submit that information because they don't have to, like we saw in that first image of George Costanza fumbling with his wallet of receipts. It's like you're at the coffee shop, you snap a picture of your receipt, and your job's done. I always brag. I've been to probably 6 or 7 conferences this year. I maybe have spent 10 minutes on my expense reports because I swipe my Ramp card and then my job's done. We also offer a really powerful accounts payable tool, a procurement tool, employee reimbursement tool. The only time I really ever use this reimbursement tool is for mileage, right? Driving to and from the Denver airport is when I request mileage because I can't use my Ramp card for mileage. And then we can also book travel with the Ramp platform. So one thing I want to call out, Ramp has kind of lost our new kid on the block card. We've been around for 5.5, close to 6 years now. We've received some awards, but really what I want to focus on here is down here, these bottom 2 sections. Ramp's goal is saving people time and saving people money. And we've done that really, really well. As you can see with 1 billion in customer savings, 10 million in hours saved. I'll highlight some of the folks we work with, like Shopify. But what I want to stress is it's not just these massive enterprise level companies. It can be 1 to 2 users or owners. It can be a mom and pop shop. A really powerful quote from one of our partners was like, "We like Ramp because it grows with us. We don't have to worry about change management down the road. We can be confident that if we introduce this at the beginning, it's going to be with us to the end." So it's not like you have to be constantly thinking about, okay, once we get to this point, what do we use after that? Ramp can be there every step of the way. So I touched on this. Our cards is our bread and butter of our platform. So you can issue cards to different employees. You can control how and where they spend these cards. You can customize what information they are required to submit as soon as they swipe that card, whether it's a receipt, a memo, a class, a customer, project, job, whatever the case may be. You can customize that. And I wanted to show a quick example of how easy this is from the end user experience. I'm at a coffee shop. I swipe my Ramp card. I get a text that says, "Hey, what was this for? I need a receipt and I need a memo. Here's my receipt. My memo is coffee with a colleague." And then again, my job is done. There's no further action on my side. That information is immediately passed to my accounting team. So not to brag again, but I've never been hounded by my finance team of, "Hey, what was this for? What is this information? We're trying to close the books. It's month end, it's year end. Get your receipts submitted." That's not a problem that we have because we make it so easy for folks to submit it. And so I'm done yelling at you for about 10 minutes. I'm going to take a break and hand it over to Lisa to talk through this. Lisa, just give me a cue when you want me to move the slides forward.
Okay, thanks, Danny. And I just want to highlight one of the reasons that, we're a consulting firm that we went with Ramp is when we have to roll out a new application, it's much easier, like Danny showed on one of the slides, if it's one application versus if it's 2 or 3 applications, because we have to train the end users and get their buy-in. So that's one of the major reasons that we partnered with Ramp, but Danny will show some more of the detail later. So usually when we start a project, we like to do what we call the current state. So we'll actually flow out what is the current state. Sorry, Danny, you can go back one slide.
Sorry about that.
we'll flow out the current state, and we'll do that in pretty much minute detail. So we'll work with the team. Let's say we're flowing out the credit card process. How do they incur their expenses? How do they code it? Who's reviewing it? What are the policies involved? All the way through to how they get that credit card transaction recorded in the accounting system. And then working with the client team, we'll flow out the future state. What do we want it to look like? And we incorporate what we call the triangle: the people, the process, and the systems. You can advance. Thanks, Danny. So we all know it's important to incorporate the people, the process, and the systems, but really, why is it so important? Why do we have to make sure we're including our key stakeholders? And I guess I've been doing this for so many years, and I've seen so many horror stories, and I understand why we have to incorporate all the end users and the key stakeholders. And I just don't mean, the 2 or 3 people who are approving in the system. I mean, even the people who are sending the transactions up to the system, even people who might not be in the system, but they rely on some of the data from the system. So it's really important to include those key stakeholders. It allows for a smooth transition and a better adoption of any tool. Obviously, more engaged the employees are, the more motivated they are. I had a client, this is where, Danny, I'm going to start to talk about some of the, I guess, the horror stories.
Yeah.
I had a client, and I won't mention names to protect all my clients, but I had a client where the executive director or the president insisted on not training their staff. Said, oh, just send a little recording. Our staff will be able to capture the expenses. They understand the process. So we sent out a recording. The team could handle the application, but they still didn't understand the whole workflow. So they didn't understand why it was taking so long to get the financials out. They didn't understand why they had to code things to a certain level. So because the people and the process was kind of broken, because we didn't train the end users, it wasn't a really good rollout. And obviously we had to go back in and we had to train the end users significantly more. But once we did that, they were very happy. Including the people on the rollout also allows for better customization. If you can get good feedback from your team members, you're able to set up the system so that they'll use it better, they'll like it better, even including taking down, and this is where I don't think we have the chat, but how many of you have organizations where the departments don't talk to each other? All my clients are nonprofits. Development tends not to talk to finance. Program tends not to talk to finance. We have a lot of walls built up around our departments. A tool like Ramp, or a tool that is engaging, allows the team for more collaboration, which obviously just improves productivity. Getting the team involved also helps reduce errors and increase compliance. As I mentioned, all my clients are nonprofits. A lot of them have to report to government agencies and on their grants and their spend downs. Having a tool that's giving them real-time, accurate data enhances that compliance. I will, Danny, maybe you could show this during the demo as well. One of the really nice features of Ramp, for those of you that have to submit your invoices as support for your vouchers to the government agency or to the funder, Ramp has a great reporting tool where you can filter out, just show me everything that's been coded to this grant or this dimension, and you can back up all your invoices, all your receipts that went to that grant. And so then you can download that and just submit it up for your voucher attachment, which is a really neat tool. Not a lot of tools have that. Getting the people involved also enables a much more positive work culture. So I'm going to talk about why it's important to include your process. I'm a big baker, especially during the holidays. If I go out and I buy a brand new shiny oven, but I'm using a recipe that calls for too much baking soda, or it's just not a good recipe, using the new oven, I'm still going to have a bad cookie or a bad cake. Getting a shiny new tool is great, but you have to make sure that you incorporate the process and you change the process as you go along. That's really key. Even with a tool like Ramp, it has so much capability, but you have to make sure that the process is right. You have to make sure that the policies of the organizations are set up in the tool. We had a client where, another client, nightmare Danny, they called us in. They lost their accounting team for about 4 months. They had a staff accountant a controller, and an executive director that were approving all credit card expenses. The two accountants left, so we only had the executive director, and he was not approving the transactions. So even though we had a great system, the process was kind of broken. What happens when we came in 4 months after the accounting team left and nobody was approving the transactions, we noticed that there was $60,000 in charges to Twitter. I don't know about you, I didn't even know you can incur costs on Twitter. It turns out it was the executive director's son who got a hold of the card and incurred $60,000 of charges. Process was totally broken. Obviously, we fixed it afterwards, but that's a point, just an example of where when the process is broken, you need to fix it. When the process is done well, like Danny mentioned, it's much more scalable. We had another client, the CFO and the controller and the accountant were working around the clock, pretty much nights, weekends, just to get the books closed. They had finance committee meetings every month that they had to prepare for. I met with them a couple of weeks ago, and the controller and the CFO actually both thanked me. And the controller said, "Lisa, thank you for letting me have dinner with my son. I haven't had dinner with my son in years. I've been working around the clock. Now I have dinner with my son. I'm not working weekends. We put in a new ERP accounting system, an expense system, and an AP system, and a budgeting and planning system. They're much more compliant, and they even mentioned that they increased 40% in revenue in 1 year, and they didn't even have to hire anyone because they had all the tools set up and all the processes ready to go." So the process is important, makes us more efficient, makes us more accurate, enables more compliance, and enables more user adoption. And obviously, as I just mentioned, allows us to be more scalable. And similar to involving the people, it makes more for collaboration across the teams. So why is it important that we have the right systems? You can have like that shiny new oven, that's great. But if that oven doesn't have a timer on it that I need all the time, it's not going to be great for me. So you have to pick the right tool. You have to make sure it aligns with the business needs. You have to make sure it handles some of the compliance that you're going to need, especially for the grants and the contracts. You have to make sure that it's going to enhance your efficiency. And like Danny mentioned or showed on that diagram, that it integrates with all your other systems, that we have a true digital transformation environment. I think that's it for examples on this slide. You can advance. Thanks, Danny. I do want to take just 1 minute to mention change management. It's really important that we incorporate in any implementation change management. As Danny also showed on that one slide, if you have so many tools and you're rolling out so many tools at once, you're going to have change overload and your team is not going to adopt anything. So you really have to plan for it. I like to be as proactive as I can when I'm rolling out a new application. I'll send out emails weeks ahead of time. Hey, we're rolling out a new application, just so you know. Even before training is scheduled, I might tell them we have testers working on the system now. So you'll see what their comments are, just to make sure that they're involved. You can go ahead, Danny. Thanks. Okay. One other, I promise not too many other nightmare stories. I will highlight the one here that talks about inefficient reviews. I had a client that called us in and they're like, our vendors are getting mad at us. It's taking us 45 days to get our vendors paid. So we went in and we did a current workflow analysis and we understood why it took 45 days. They had about 7 or 8 approvers on their workflow. And the reason being is their coding was so specific and they wanted to make sure that they got their coding accurate, that they had that many levels of reviewers. So we went in, redesigned the whole process, got it down to 2 or 3 key individuals. We even bifurcated the process. So anything below a certain threshold, I didn't need as many reviewers on it, right? If it's over 50,000, I might have a board member involved. So we revamped that process. They now, I'm happy to say, get their vendors paid within 2 to 3 days. Some of the key benefits of transforming AP and expense. Obviously, Danny touched on these. We touched on some of these as we went along. I do want to highlight though that I've never had a client that did not like a new automated accounts payable and expense tool. I never had a client say this is the wrong tool. Um, Clients just love it because it's an easy fix. It takes away so much of the manual work. It makes their team more communicative and more collaborative. It makes them more compliant. The auditors really love it, for those of you who are auditors on the call, because you automatically can get access and you can see the approval trail on every transaction. Um, and I think that's it. I won't hold us up anymore, Danny. I'll let you give us a great demo.
No, I appreciate it, Lisa. While I'm getting logged in here, I think one of my favorite pieces about working at Ramp, at least going back to Lisa's point about getting like the people's adoption onto the platform. I was actually just back home for Thanksgiving and I was explaining way too high level, like, oh, I work at this fintech company. It's a corporate card expense management accounts payable tool that speeds up automation. And then my cousin was like, are you talking about Ramp? Here's my Ramp card, and I like Ramp. I love Ramp, and that's happened more than just with this cousin. It's like the more people that I come across that are using the platform like it, and that's really powerful from the end user perspective because it's making the employee's life easier. They're using the technology that they can focus on their job, and it's not a couple hours each week where they're bogged down with an expense report. So jumping in here, just a thumbs up from Lisa and Rebecca. Y'all can see my demo environment, correct? Okay. So we talked a lot about expense management versus spend management, and this is where we'll get into the weeds a little bit. Spend management is focusing on spend before it happens, being very intentional with where your money's going, rather than the retroactive approach of expense management of there's cards floating out there, we're waiting on people to submit expense reports, we're hoping they spent within guidelines, we don't really know where our money went. Ramp solves for that because you're issuing these funds to employees with guardrails of how and where they can spend it. So
And
within this,
Danny, that's really important to a lot of nonprofits that have program managers out in the world, because you want to enable them to do their work, right? And so if they have a budget ahead of time and they know, oh, I have, $1,000 that I could spend doing this little get together to, promote women entrepreneurs in Africa, then
yeah,
you could just give it to them up front.
yeah, absolutely. And then you have an idea. And also, I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, but I think it inherently makes the employee act more appropriate with their spend because they know there's eyes on it. They know these alerts. It's less of like, oh, I think I can slip this receipt through, or maybe I can get away with this because I know, not to throw Rebecca under the bus, but I know Rebecca's not going to take a look at this that closely because it's end of year and she probably has a million receipts that she's reviewing. So there's this accountability that is put on the employee here. But what I can do is I can issue cards. I can say this is your travel card for $2,000. You can make this monthly, one time, reoccurring, whatever makes the most sense. This submission policy is really powerful. This is what you can customize and the information that you're asking for from the employee as soon as they swipe their card. So I can say, hey, I'm issuing this to David Wallace, and he's in our sales department. So he owes me a memo, he owes me a receipt, and he owes me a customer. If this was like a different person, maybe they just owe me a dim or a memo, and that's all there is to it. Where Ramp starts to separate ourselves from a traditional card is the controls that you can place on a card. I want to stress you can make this as strict or as broad as you need it to be. So this is my travel card. I could say, hey, the merchants that you're allowed to spend on are like Southwest, Marriott, and Uber. If you try to use this at the bar down the street or on your personal Netflix account, it's not even going to go through. So we're preventing that from happening before it even happens. Like Lisa's example of Twitter. If Twitter was not an authorized merchant on this card, it's not going through. So you don't have that problem that you're trying to solve for after the fact. You're preventing it from ever happening.
And Danny, I have a client that uses it, and we just specifically restricted them to Home Depot. They run a housing organization, and sometimes they have emergencies. So I wanted to enable them. If there's an emergency on the weekend, they can run to Home Depot and get what they need. They can't spend it on anything else.
Exactly. And you could do a start date or a lock date, right? Where hey, this project is only lasting through Christmas. So as of Christmas, I'm going to lock this card. They should not be spending after that. On top of that, you have the coding rules. What I mean by coding rules is you can pre-code these cards. If I'm issuing this card for a specific reason, a specific department, a specific purpose or grant or whatever the case may be, I can pre-code this card. So by the time my card is swiped, that coding based off of this rule is automatically tied to that transaction. That's a pretty specific use case, but it's also really powerful because then you're not chasing folks down for like this massive bank feed of who spent what where. It's like, no, I know that this card was used, so it's going to be allocated to this specific grant. So I've issued cards to my employees. Folks start spending on these cards. Let me see if I can actually get a good example here. Folks start spending on these cards, and then these transactions are going to flow into Ramp. This is not a traditional bank feed. And I say that because we have the card data, so we're able to provide as much information as we have access to. We have the merchant, we have the logo, we have the category of that merchant, we have the date, the card holder is parsed out here, the category is parsed out here. You'll see the memo that was submitted, you'll see the receipt that was submitted. Again, if we go back to the PowerPoint, this can be submitted from a text because everybody's on their phone already. Everybody can submit this information instantly. On top of that, I'll show you a feature where you can chase people down for this information if they don't submit it. We also have an auto lock feature where if they don't submit a receipt within X amount of time, their card's getting shut off, which is really powerful. A lot of our
Very, very powerful. And I get copies of those emails. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a great feature.
exactly. You'll also notice our integration here. All of your customizations flowing through from, this is a QuickBooks example, but Sage, NetSuite, Xero, you have these different dimensions that you can code to. I wanted to make sure to call out what Lisa alluded to, where I can look at all of my card transactions. I can apply a filter for a specific QuickBooks grant or whatever the case may be. That would provide a report for me that I could then download and have that proof, all of those receipts and information for that specific category. There's also some reports up here that I can show as well. Thinking through this, I also want to highlight our App Center. I talked about it a little bit in the presentation, but we have all these integrations with Gmail, Outlook, Amazon, Uber, Lyft. What that does is we auto fetch these receipts that transact on those platforms. So when I'm traveling, I'm on my business Uber profile. I don't have a receipt that I have to screenshot and submit elsewhere. Ramp just pulls that in. Or I purchased a Southwest flight. That receipt goes to my email. Ramp pulls that in. And so it's like a zero touch process. Um, Let me see here. We also have bill pay. That's really important that I want to highlight real quickly. The main value of Ramp, or one of the main values, is that this is all under one roof. To Lisa's point, you don't have these disparate systems that you're setting up. You apply for Ramp, you get approved, and then you also have a really powerful bill pay tool where you can enter bills, you can set up approval policies, you can pay those vendors via ACH or check, and you can automate a lot of that process. So as customized or as complex, hopefully it's not 8 approvers like Lisa's nightmare story, but if you need it, you can do it. I don't recommend 8 approvers, but it's absolutely an option there.
And Danny, I really like the rules and the policies that you could set behind when it comes to the invoices. So like I said, you could bifurcate and make it, for anything less than $1,000, I
Yep.
need this type of workflow. For anything over 50,000, I need a board member to approve it as well. If it hits a certain development director or program manager, I can also create the rule that, if it hits this department, always send it to this person to approve. So I find the rules are really flexible to set up. So I don't have to worry about how it's getting routed.
Absolutely. And I kind of skipped over it, and I want to go back here. Additional rules for coding. Think of this like your traditional bank rules, except our bank feeds don't break or they don't lock us out. So what I can do here is in settings, coding rules, rather than coding cards at the card level, I can do this at the global level, where I say every time this merchant comes through, it's going to be coded to meals and entertainment. Every time this merchant comes through, it flows to travel. I can do that based off of merchant or based off of category. So if the category of the merchant is airlines, throw that in our travel category. So by the time you're in your accounting screen, a lot of this information is going to be pre-populated and you're more of just reviewing, making sure it looks accurate and then approving or syncing into your accounting solution.
And Danny, it's also real time. So I'm not waiting for the end of the month for things to get recorded. So oftentimes, a program director will say, how much money do I have left to spend on my program or on my grant? And they're like, well, accounting might say, I have to wait till I close the month and I have to wait till everything's recorded and everything's reconciled. They can see real time exactly how much they have left in their budget to spend.
Absolutely. I'll show that too. And I want to be conscious of time. I promised like a 10-minute demo. Got a couple things left here. Uh, Going back to Lisa's point, approvals, you can set up approvals at any step of the way before spend is even allocated, after the transaction comes through, to make sure the bill is approved before payment is made. You have total control on how and where and when your money is going where you think it should go. To Lisa's point here, we have this card section where I can actually see, like, what if somebody comes to me and says, how much do I have left on this budget? Well, first and foremost, they can log into their Ramp app or their Ramp profile and immediately see that. So they wouldn't even need to bug Lisa about it. But you could see here the total utilization and the amount that was issued for that grant or that specific card. We have a procurement tool that we offer. We won't have time to get into that today. One other thing I want to highlight, just we're focused on QuickBooks Online today, but if anybody has Sage or NetSuite clients, Ramp is really powerful because you can manage multiple entities under one Ramp instance. So you have one Sage entity or one Sage instance with 10 entities. You have one Ramp instance with those same 10 entities to avoid any sort of intercompany exchange. The last thing I'll call out here, and this is kind of the summit, right? We've aggregated all of our spend under Ramp. We have our bill pay flowing through Ramp. We have our cards flowing through Ramp. We have our reimbursements flowing through Ramp. That's going to give us real-time data to make strategic decisions. Because all of this data is in our system, we're going to call out total spend by person, spending by vendor, department, accounting category. We can create new dashboards so that we can have strategic conversations, whether it's with our clients or with our team. Where's our money going? Why are we spending so much on XYZ category? Who's spending the most? Why did Danny spend 1,000% more this month than he did last month? Maybe it's time to have a talking to with Danny because that's that's out of line. So here's, I guess we can't really ask questions. Or are there any questions in the chat here, Rebecca?
There are actually a lot of questions that came through in our conferences IO. So I know I said to you earlier, be prepared. We've only gotten a couple questions. Well, they have questions. So
Okay.
I'm gonna try and go through them. Do you want them all now, right now, or is there something else you wanted to share before and do them at the end?
Let me pause here. Lisa, is there anything I skipped over that you would like me to highlight in this demo? Just
Now, I think on this last slide too, it's funny because we implemented Ramp at a client and the AP manager said to us, well, what you're taking away my job. And I was like, no, there's a lot more that you could do instead of manually worrying about how things are getting coded. And we actually showed her how to look and review the dashboard and work with her team on the items on the dashboard, right? So we all know we have to move to that advisory perspective as opposed to being more transactional. And this really helps get you there. And yeah, she was happy after I showed her that, but initially she was like, please don't take away my job.
the other piece I'll mention is a lot of times what I hear is, what about our points? What about our points? Points are hard and it's a tough conversation to have. But to Lisa's point, what if you were able to put systems and processes in place where you grow your business by 40% revenue? Is that 40% revenue going to outweigh 1,000 points that you earn because you booked on your Amex, whatever. Now, you're not compromising or sacrificing those points because Ramp does offer cash back on all of your purchases as well. The other element to this, before I hand it over to Rebecca to fire off some of these questions, this is more for my outsourced accounting folks, where you might have a firm that you're working with a number of different clients. Ramp offers an advisor console. So this advisor console is a one-stop shop for you to manage all of your clients and all of their spend via Ramp. So it's really powerful. If you think about, oh wait, I can just log into one location and I have access to all of my clients and their card spend, their reimbursements, their bill pay, that's where time saving really kicks into gear. The more clients you have on this dashboard, the more you don't even have to think about where do I need to go to find this? Where do I need to go to track this person down? So it's all done through here. Adding clients is very straightforward. You can apply for them, you can refer them to Ramp, or you can reach out to your contact at Ramp, and they'll help coordinate a one-on-one demo. There's also rewards, but we'll touch on that here back in the PowerPoint. I want to go back into the system and see if Rebecca had some specific questions that I could help highlight here.
This might be more in the presentation, not sure. There's a lot of integration
Yeah.
questions, specific accounting software and things like that. There was one that's more like a general, like what accounting software does Ramp integrate with? But then there were some specifics, MS Dynamics, Uninet, Deltek. Let's see if there, I know there was more that they were asking. But is there like a page where you have all the accounting integrations listed? That might be
Yeah,
the easiest way to get those done.
let me see if I can get that pulled up here. And a couple that you rattled off, I know immediately it's yes. Disconnect. So QuickBooks Online, there's a export for QuickBooks Desktop. We're actually working on a direct integration right now with QuickBooks Desktop. Xero, NetSuite, Sage Intacct, Microsoft Business Central, Acumatica, Zoho, Campfire, Finaloop, Pilot, Puzzle, Rillet are some smaller ones. And then if you don't see the option on here for a direct integration, we have a universal CSV. So you can search here. And then what that's going to do is you can export the information out of Ramp in a format that is compatible with the system that you're using. So rather than hitting sync, you hit export, it creates a nice file, and then you can import that file into your accounting solution.
So would that be the solution for, I know somebody in the chat mentioned Deltek or Uninet. I know Deltek being more of the government contractor kind of, and being in Maryland, certainly have a large population of those folks. Okay, there you go. So,
Deltek would be that universal CSV motion.
okay. So we have options there. So let me, and I know I saw Microsoft Dynamics in that list.
And
Infor?
Uninet as well, Danny. Probably Uninet, which is
Uninet,
another government oriented.
yeah. They're asking about Infor. I'm not familiar with that one. Does that sound familiar to you?
I haven't heard that either.
Okay.
FOR. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
FOR. So
INFOR. Mm-hmm.
what you would do in this scenario is if you don't see it in this list, you can just select Infor and then upload your chart of accounts into Ramp, and then you have that option as well. The ones that you see in that list are ones that we've just seen before in our system that have kind of that predefined export file for those systems. But if you don't see your file or your solution on that list, it's as simple as importing your chart of accounts.
And then I just got another one that's more about integration with government agencies. Is Ramp capable of doing that? FMIS, integration with government agencies, which is FMIS. Is Ramp capable of doing that?
Government agencies, that I don't know.
And I don't think it's a direct integration, but it can definitely give you, similar to a CSV file, it can give you a file in the format that you need to upload. But I don't think there's a direct one now.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks, Lisa.
But
Thanks,
what's
Lee.
really helpful, that's why I really like that filtering capability by like the dimensions by grant, because then I can get all the data ready that I need to upload.
There you go. Yep. So then someone else asked about the corporate purchasing cards, maybe that are already in existence, and maybe people are wary of any kind of change, or I know there's some other change management type questions here. How would it work with a corporate purchasing card?
So it would replace that card,
Okay.
right? A common question is like, can we feed this into Ramp? But then you're missing out on the power of Ramp. The power of Ramp is the control and the receipt capture and the memo capture from our text messaging functionality. What I would say about if you have corporate cards or purchasing cards in place, there's this migrate payments feature here where you can essentially upload um, um, statements from these purchasing cards. And then Ramp's going to use some AI to say, hey, you should probably create a card for Rebecca. You need a card for Lisa. You should create a card specifically for travel because 90% of Lisa's purchases are travel.
Mm,
So it's going to help you migrate that spend over.
okay. And then the rest kind of get into more uh, some different issues. So I don't know if you wanted to go back to the partner slides, and then I will walk through some of these last questions with you all.
Yeah, let's do that. I'll go back to the slides. I teased a lot, and then I'm realizing now I didn't even show one of my favorite features or my firm's favorite features is this reminders tab. So I can quickly, under my card transactions, find a list of all of the transactions that I'm still missing information for, that I still need a receipt, or I still need a memo, or I need a coding, or a code, class, grant. And I can remind individuals specifically, or I can remind in bulk. So rather than trying to figure out who still owes me information, it's like, no, I have 2 clicks and then my job is done for chasing that down. And then Ramp's also going to automatically chase these people down in the background with emails. So I want to go back here and getting into partnering with Ramp. So I touched on it a little bit earlier, but our only goal is saving folks time and money. If we can't save you time, if we can't save you money, we will go our separate ways. Like we don't want to force something, and that's our job here at Ramp is to figure out can we help? And more times than not, we can. And it's worth a conversation or it's worth a demo to figure out your specific workflows to identify, oh, Ramp has a really slick tool to automate that. Ramp can add time back in your day so you can go to dinner with your son or whatever the case may be. Increase capacity and automate manual tasks. One of and I've only or I only say this because I've been at some different conferences and it seems like a common theme of capacity and talent
Mm,
is arguably the most pressing issue in the industry today. So I've seen folks kind of go 2 routes or a combination of these routes. One is like outsourcing and they start to outsource. Two is incorporating technology or a combination of both. So the more you can incorporate technology, the more you can automate these manual tasks, kind of the less you have to think about hiring new folks or bringing on somebody else and training them. It's like, hey, can I automate this and eliminate hours throughout the course of the month so I don't have to hire somebody? That's what Ramp can help with. And it opens up capacity to scale your business as well, where you can bring on more clients or you can focus on your business rather than expense reports, like we talked about. Delivering strategic advisory services. This kind of goes back into eliminating manual tasks. If we can eliminate these manual tasks, what would everybody focus on? Would it be additional advisory services for clients? Would it be strategic insights that you could charge more for? Just something that we've seen as how do we button up our systems and processes like Lisa talked about so that we can focus on the services that are increasing our revenue and then accelerating your impact. Being able to be that superhero of, hey, client ABC or hey, team ABC, what are we doing here? I noticed that we had $60,000 in Twitter expenses. What are we doing? So eliminating these nightmares. Hopefully, the more Lisa and Arabella / Kiwi starts to use Ramp, the less nightmares she's having. I say all of that too. After this session, we are going to be sending out an opportunity to connect with us with a link. And with that link, if you join us and mention that you are a part of this CPA summit today, you'll get a $100 gift card. So have a conversation, ask your questions, connect with the Ramp team. We would love to hear from you. It's really hard to do it in a forum this big with everybody's individual questions or, hey, would this client be a good fit? Yes or no? But we're gonna do our best here. And so that's kind of the spiel on partnering with us. We want to have these conversations. We want to hear from you. Be on the lookout for this follow-up link that we send out after this, and get a $100 gift card.
Sounds great to me. Um, I'll look at some of the next questions. We were talking right before we started just about the audience we have here. And in MACPA, we have kind of a half and half public accounting serving clients, and then the other half of our members are their clients, the CFO, controllers, accounting managers in all sorts of industries. But of course, there's small business included in that too. One of the top voted up questions is this cost effective for a small business? So I'll have you
Yeah,
answer that.
So
yeah.
Danny, can I jump in? Sorry. I have a client that actually has very few transactions and just saving on some of the wire fees that she was incurring
Mm.
more than paid for it.
Wow.
So even if it's a small client, not doing that much in terms of volume of transactions, it really pays for itself. Plus, then I have that whole audit trail. Um, and I have that available when it comes down to audit time. So I find there's no client that I don't put on it unless they're literally only issuing like one check a month.
Makes sense.
And then also to piggyback off of that, pricing is huge. So Ramp offers two options today. We have an entirely free option, and then we have Ramp Plus. The free option includes your standard approval workflows. We connect with Xero and QuickBooks in that free offering. Our Plus offering is like the Sage Intacct, the NetSuite use cases, and really advanced approval workflows. So the most you'd be paying is $12 per user per month, or you could use it entirely for free if you fall into that Xero or QuickBooks bucket. On top of that, asking about like cost effectiveness, a lot of times, more times than not, actually, your cash back is going to outweigh any sort of fee that you incur from using the Ramp platform. So not only are you getting these automations and these controls, you're getting cash back that offsets any sort of fee that comes along with Ramp, or you're using it entirely for free, and then what's more cost effective than free?
Can't argue with that. And then we'll wrap up. And I know we didn't get to all of these questions, but thank you so much for the link where people can ask. Some of these get into very detailed use case scenarios and stuff. So I'm sure great conversations to be had with your all team and their specific use cases. But being the profession, the skeptical profession that we are required to be, the questions about how are fraudulent charges identified and handled within Ramp and Ramp credit cards.
Yeah, I can take this unless Lisa wants to chime in here.
Go ahead, Danny. I'll chime in
So
after.
we operate on the Visa network. So Ramp is a Visa card, meaning you have the same option to dispute charges as you would with a Visa card. And then same with a Visa card, there's going to be some sort of investigation to figure out what happened and is this fraudulent, is this not? What I really like to call out on that note, you can prevent a lot of fraud from happening with the controls that you can put in place,
Right.
right? Like if I were to create this card that can be used X, Y, and Z location, that's going to eliminate a lot of the fraud up front or any potential of fraud. On top of that, I work with probably close to 400 accounting firms that equates to thousands of clients using Ramp. Fraud is very rare in my inbox. There's some crazy use cases. I'm not going to pretend like there's never been a fraud case on Ramp, but it is not something that is consistently coming up in my inbox, or folks reaching out saying, "Hey, Danny, this is a disaster." And I would expect that if it was a common theme across my firms and their clients and their industries.
And that's where, Rebecca, the process really comes into play. I find that the rules are so robust, it does minimize any potential fraud. But if you don't have the process in place, the potential is still there, right? If you don't have an approval set up, someone can get away with anything. One of the things I find that my clients really don't do well with is vendor vetting. So they don't set up good policies and processes to make sure that a leadership team member is not paying their uncle, cousin, aunt, sister, right? So you have to build those out. The fraud prevention, I guess, procedures still have to be put in place, but the tool is there to help you do it.
Awesome. Well, with that, I think we are at the end of the session. Thank you so much, Danny and Lisa. Great information, great product and resources for our members. I'm sure these questions you'll be getting reached out to kind of talk about a little bit more of the specifics of that. Thank you so much, Danny and Lisa.